Hello and welcome back to the Solo RolePlayers Podcast. Today on the show, I am thrilled to bring you another solo RPG game designer and writer from Blackwell Games, Anna Blackwell. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. And I must tell you, actually, and I didn't tell you this before, but I discovered your work and came across some of your stuff long before I even knew what solo RPGs were.
Wow.
I think it was Delve, in fact it was Delve, come up in a Kickstarter. I don't know when that was that 2022?
2020.
2020?
Yeah, it was
Wow.
just before COVID hit the UK.
Right. Now that was about 3 years before I actually discovered solo RPG and started getting into it. So you were really, really early in my awareness of this fantastic hobby. And I booked Delve, I backed Delve, remember getting it in the post just before I went home for Christmas, and sat there on hot Christmas days with my son drawing cards and drawing wonderful but terribly drawn maps of the dungeons. We will get into Delve and some of your games. I do want to talk more about that. But first, I just wanted to ask you, everyone has a story of how they discovered and got into RPGs in general in the first place. So what is that story for you?
For me, I started RPGs when I was in my teenage years, although I was aware of them before that. I remember playing games like Neverwinter Nights 2, which was the most Dungeons and Dragons video game you could get back in the 2000s. But yeah, we really started playing D&D, my partner and I and a couple of friends from high school, with 2nd edition D&D, and then straight on to 4th edition, which was really awful. Such a bad system. And yeah, we've been playing nearly weekly ever since, all different systems and settings.
Wow. So we're talking, 2000s, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it would have been 2010, 2011.
What was the awareness in general of RPGs at that time? Because I know, earlier, at the sort of beginning of it, some of the people I talked to were right back there at the beginning, and a lot of others came in much later. But what was the sort of general awareness in that age?
I mean, back then it was Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder were the only ones people really talked about. Sometimes you'd hear about Vampire the Masquerade, if you were really nerdy. But the general public had no idea. There were some jokes in TV shows, the IT Crowd, specifically, let's make fun of nerds. What do nerds do? Nerds play Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, I didn't know about things like Drive-Thru RPG or websites where people made and uploaded indie RPGs. Mm-hmm. I'm sure the scene existed, but as far as I was aware, there was nothing. Just the occasional Kickstarter for things like Kobolds Ate My Babies, and then weird little shops and quiet alleyways of Glasgow City.
Yeah. And what were those early experiences like for you? You're playing with sort of school friends or at this stage? Were you GMing at that point? Did you leap straight into that role or were you more a player?
At first I think I GM'd first, and then we did it a kind of round robin type thing where each week another one of us would run a one-shot fantasy campaign with varying degrees of success. And after a little while I kind of fell into the role of forever GM, and still haven't broken out of it.
Yeah, that's the name, right?
Yep.
And I mean, at that time, if I remember, I was in high school around that sort of time as well, I guess. And that was a pretty golden period for video games. What was it about the RPGs that drew you in and that made them so interesting and kept bringing you back?
Definitely the interaction and the freedom they provide. The fact you could sit around, and back then, I'm sure a lot of people have this same feeling when you're a teenager, you didn't have responsibilities in the same way. So we would sit and play for up to 24 hours at a time.
Wow.
Yeah, real dedication to hitting goblins.
Yeah.
But the fact, there was just untold possibilities in it. Video games, definitely back then, were very limited, very story focused. I think Minecraft was just out.
Right.
Still in the alpha.
Yeah.
And everything else was a lot more limited than that.
And so then from doing that, and you said you've kept the games running ever since, which is super impressive. I don't play many group games. I've only just started. In fact, I'm almost entirely a solo player. I did start GMing a game a few months ago for the very first time.
Nice.
Which is great, except struggling to get it together more than once every 6 weeks or, something like that.
Yeah, that's what we've hit as well. The curse of the 30s.
The curse of the 30s, right. How is it then that you started getting into solo? Did you discover it somewhere? Did you just sort of start doing it organically? How did that happen?
So in 2019, me and my partner moved from Glasgow in Scotland down to Manchester in England for university. And we were just miles away from anyone we knew. We didn't have any communities down there. And at that point, I was working as a tabletop game reviewer and was given a copy of Artifact to review. And I just found it so interesting, how deeply emotional this experience could be. And I was just fascinated by it. So a couple months later, I think it was about December, shortly before Zine Quest would happen in February, I saw people talking about Zine Quest on Kickstarter, make a very small game and release it and get some money. And I was like, oh, I'm poor and I have ideas.
Uni student logic.
Yeah. And I had this basically this idea for a game that would help people make maps the way I do for running D&D. Let's make an environment. So I had this little doodle that would evolve and become Delve. So it was very short. It was I think I found Artifact in September and then was making solo RPGs in December.
Wow. So you sort of, it came together organically as the kinds of prep and stuff you were already doing for your campaigns. I see. Are you an avid drawer in general?
I like to doodle. I wouldn't call myself an artist, but I do enjoy putting pen to paper and making things. Mm-hmm. Especially weird maps. Although, to be honest, it's something I've not done in a long time. I recently had to clear out a kind of lockup where we had a bunch of stuff from the move recently and found all my old notepads from years upon years of RPGs.
Treasure.
And just filled with maps. And it's fun to look back and see the things that remind you of the campaigns you were playing at that point.
Yeah. Oh, that's what a treasure.
Yeah.
And the maps in Delve, let's talk a little bit about Delve. So this is your first ever design and sort of almost by accident, right?
Yeah.
What was it like designing a game? I mean, I guess you had some restrictions because it was for this, for the Zine Quest, was it?
Yeah.
So you had some sort of outline and stuff, but what was that experience like? Did you find it really natural? Did it come easily to you, or was it not so much?
Delve came quite easily. So Delve wasn't my first game that I'd ever made. I had made a group generic RPG system back in 2014, which is the system we still use now. But it was my first time making a really specific solo game. And the fact it had to be 60 pages was my absolute limit because I was using instant print, I think, at that point, and they had a hard limit on what you could print a zine as. So that's why there's some bits of information that are just squeezed in where they might not make the most sense.
Yeah.
It was interesting. It was intense. I think the whole project, Delve, Rise, and Umbra, took me 6 months from start to finish.
Wow.
But it was just kind of trying to think about what makes roguelike games and stuff like that so fun. So how do I make these events repeatable? How do I make them spark inspiration without completely just telling people what to draw?
Mm-hmm. So Delve, for those who don't know, could you actually just give people a bit of an overview of what Delve specifically is?
Yeah, Delve is my love letter to Dwarf Fortress, but I don't know how to play Dwarf Fortress. I love the stories that people make from Dwarf Fortress, and I wanted to be able to do that myself, but I didn't have the time to learn Dwarf Fortress. So Delve is a 2D map drawing game where you make the side view of a dwarven hold as you dig into the earth using a deck of normal playing cards to uncover things like skeleton crypts and sleeping dragons. You build up the barracks and kitchens and throne rooms and such, until eventually you uncover something horrible and the whole place gets destroyed.
Yeah. And it combines the thing I really liked about it, and well, the thing my son liked most about it as well was the sort of resource management aspect of it that you have a little bit, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, there's a nice simple resource management for the hearts and diamonds, being able to buy rooms and hire units.
When you were working on Delve, had you already had ideas for Rise and Umbra, or did they sort of come one after the other?
So when I first put Delve up on Kickstarter, I expected to get like £100, like such a small amount of money. But then people really liked the idea. I think there's a lot of people out there that love the Dwarf Fortress stories but don't want to fight that interface.
Yeah.
So like, it really took off, and I got excited, and I was like, oh my God, yeah, okay, so Dungeon Keeper is like another one of my favorite games, and I want to create one that like captures that feeling. And then the Kickstarter kept like going, and I was like, oh my God, let's do RimWorld. RimWorld's amazing. So yeah, like I think the desire was there, but I hadn't planned it out as well as I maybe could have.
Yeah, sure. And then you had the ideas, and then all of a sudden you have the commitment to actually film them, which is a good thing for creatives as well. You know, sometimes. Sometimes. I struggle with that sometimes as well, painting myself into a corner.
Yeah, I've dug myself into a few holes over the years.
Yeah. Well, happily you've got Delve to dig yourself deeper and actually make it part of the game. It intrigues me. You said that you created your own system way back in 2014, and you're still playing that today. What drove you to stop playing D&D or Pathfinder and actually start working on your own thing?
Yeah, so at that point, like trying to find a role-playing system that did everything we wanted to do, because we were poor teenagers. We couldn't buy a system for every setting we wanted. So we went from Dungeons and Dragons, and D&D 4th edition was a very specific type of fantasy. Like you couldn't do low fantasy in it. Everyone had to like exist in this high fantasy world where like fighters can punch a hole in the ground and cause a volcano to rise up. And it's like, but what if we want to do like some really low fantasy Greek mythology stuff? And it's like, okay, let's try and find another system that lets us do that. And the only one we could find at the time was Savage Worlds, which is a very cool system, but is very gamey. So we wanted to find and make something that kind of felt more narrative, but would work in whatever kind of system, setting, and like type of game we wanted to play. And I ended up creating a game that I have since learned is very similar to Fate.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that.
Me neither, but I've had some people pick up my original game and go, this is the same as Fate. And it's like, oh, cool. I wish I'd known that at the time. I could have saved myself a lot of headache.
Yeah. So what does that look like? What is the thing about it that allows you to get all those elements you're looking for?
Basically taking it away from like arbitrary number stat systems where it's like, strength 18 and stuff like that. And instead building your character as a collection of skills and traits. So skills are things they can do, traits are things that describe them, and then just having a dice pool where you roll all the skill dice and then traits add to that result, meaning that like everything is always adding together to increase your chance of success. And I think the thing that we mostly like about it though is that the combat system is basically instantaneous rather than an initiative based one. So like everyone declares their action, rolls like initiative, but like you're not going to play through it round by round. It just, everything happens in one big go. And it lets a lot of like tactical elements come out. It kind of gets rid of metagaming, because if you try and like, if someone says they're going to dodge and then you're like, oh, I'll hit them when they like stop rolling, but then you beat them in initiative, you've struck the wrong place. So for us, it works really well, but I think there's a large cost on the GM to be very familiar with the system and really know how to make a good game and story out of it. Which is why if anyone like listens to this podcast and goes and finds it on my itch, know that I do not endorse it. I want to make an updated version, but I have a lot more projects on my mind just now.
A lot of projects you certainly do have. Before moving on to them though, just one more thing about your game. Did the experience of creating that game, were you doing it collaboratively with your players as well, or?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Okay.
was getting them to like test out everything, and we had a lot of play tests that ended with, well, that didn't work.
Hmm.
That's 2 hours we're not getting back, but we learned another way not to make an RPG.
A very important lesson. How did that experience inform when your solo game design? And did you take any ideas and lessons from your game, your original game, into your solo stuff?
Yeah, I think I did. I think the main one is definitely to trust the players. I see a lot of games where like it's very like it holds the player's hand and like tells them exactly what they need to do, and this is how you're going to play through the game, and this is the exact like feeling and themes and stuff we're going to give you. Whereas I really like to make my games in such a way that players have a lot of creative input in it. Like Delve, like it's about dwarves, but I mean, as I've said to people who've asked on the Discord before, like feel free to completely reskin it. And I've seen people share maps where like they are little creatures instead.
Mm.
People make up new rooms, new like things to find, and I think it's really cool to have that like ability to just take a game and make it your own, which is exactly what we wanted to do with that first RPG in the first place.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and leaving that sort of space to allow people to push into the bits that they enjoy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is one of the beauties of solo RPGs in
Oh,
general.
definitely. Yeah, more so than group RPGs, I'd say, because you don't have to worry about balance.
Yeah, exactly. Do you get to play much yourself in solo RPGs?
Not as much as I would like. Like, I have been on a year of circus training, which has made me like basically get up, go out to a warehouse, and do physical training till like 5 o'clock at night, and then come home and work on my Kickstarters that I'm still trying to fulfill.
Yeah. And then
So
collapse.
and then collapse. So there's not been much time for playing this past year,
Yeah.
outside of like a few scheduled group games.
Is there anything that you've been intrigued by solo, or that you would like to try solo?
Yeah, so I went to the UK Games Expo at the start of the month,
Yeah, I
and
wanted to come to that. Couldn't quite
it
get there.
was really good. The new layout is much friendlier.
Hmm.
But yeah, but being able to like walk around and see, the things that people are making, I've picked up Outsiders, which is the sequel to Notorious, the like sci-fi
Oh,
bounty
yeah.
hunting solo RPG.
Yep.
I've picked up In Ruins, which is another dungeon building, but this time it's group RPG, where like you build a castle, then you each take the different factions and make the ruins your own.
Cool.
I've picked up Mapamundi, which I'm very excited by.
What's that?
Uh,
What's that one?
oh, Mapamundi, it's a very beautiful, very premium product, but it's a ecology and exploration RPG where you're exploring this fantasy world and trying to like find information on these monsters without fighting them. So it's like a very healing and studying kind of RPG.
I've noticed I haven't played many of your games yet, but I have noticed the ones, or some of the ones that I hear about the most, and even within our own Discord. But you do have a bit of a tendency towards some of the more sort of cozier type style. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, definitely. So one of the things, like as I was saying earlier, like my first introduction to solo RPGs was with a game called Artifact, where you're playing as a magical object as it gets handed down throughout the ages. And it's a game about loneliness and abandonment. So when I first, after Delve, when I like first considered myself a solo RPG designer, I started looking around the solo scene, and I noticed that so many of them were very emotionally charged and in a negative way. Like a lot of games out there seem to be intent on exploring very dark mindsets. So I wanted to create games that would allow people to explore more positive things and focus on healing and making things better.
That's a really lovely angle. And so Apothecaria is one of your more successful games.
Yeah.
Would that be right?
Yeah, definitely.
In fact, I see here just on your website, I didn't realize that you had additional releases to Apothecaria.
Oh, are you on blackwellwriter.com or the itch.io?
Blackwell Rider.
If you look at the itch.io, there's another like 10.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it's pretty successful then.
Yeah, so thanks to Patreon, I was doing almost monthly releases of like expansions, and they were helping like fund that. So it let me explore all different like settings, different ailments, and things that would make the kind of potion crafting experience in Apothecaria more definitive.
Fantastic. When did you do Apothecaria? That
Uh,
was not too long after Delve, wasn't it?
yeah, 2021.
That's another one that's been on my list for a lot, and I know in our Discord we have one of our members is working on designing a game, and I've just lost your site. As another sort of cozier sort of game, and she talks about Apothecaria as being one of
Aw.
her influences.
That's fantastic.
As to why she's doing that. Just for me, because I sort of have a loose idea of what Apothecaria is. It's about making potions, right?
Yes.
Would you consider, is it a journaling game?
Oh yeah, it's definitely like, I'd say journaling, but like it doesn't have to be like first person. It could be written as a story, like as fiction. You could record it in any way, just as you can with any journaling game. But I know like some people who aren't fully aware of like solo RPGs tend to think of journaling as just diary writing.
Mm-hmm.
It can be that, but it can also be other forms of recording it. But the idea is that the old witch of Hyranic has gone missing, so you are the new witch. Everything is gender neutral, so there's no like, witches aren't always female.
Mm-hmm.
All the characters are presented as like you have the choice. And then the idea is the patients will come to you in order to get cures for their fantasy ailments, which the book has inside. And you will use the book to work out what ingredients can cure those ailments, and then go explore the different locales in the game using a deck of playing cards to see what events you get. And that's what you're recording as you play.
Fantastic. All that's available over on your itch site, I
Yes.
assume.
Yep.
Now, it does not surprise me to hear that you're into the journaling style games, because the second time I came across your name completely unexpectedly and recognized it was when I was reading. I met, and I can't remember who it was. I was at Essen a few years ago, and I met. The name is blanking, but the editor of
Senate. Yeah. Dan Jolin.
It was Dan. Dan
Yeah.
and the artist, I think, were there. I was working at volunteering at the Oathsworn booth, if you know Oathsworn.
The name rings a bell, but I don't know.
Some massive plastic Kickstarter boss battler thing. Great fun.
Okay.
But yeah, I was working at that booth and met him and only then was informed about this magazine that I hadn't heard of. And at the time, I wasn't into RPGs at all. And I was, I sort of transitioned over from board games relatively recently, like within the last 18 months or so.
Wow.
And before that, I was playing mostly board games, a lot with my son, but also a lot solo. And was introduced to this magazine by chatting to Dan at Essen. And when I picked up, I ordered a couple of copies of it, of the first few issues, and then was surprised to see at the bottom of an article, Anna Blackwell is the author. How did you get into that gig?
So before I did solo game design, I was writing for Tabletop Gaming Magazine, Weird Science, Senate, Tabletop Spirit, Retro Gamer. Basically,
Prolific.
as many game magazines as I could get my hands into, plus a few websites. So that's how I was making money before I became a designer.
Fantastic. So you write a lot then?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And actually, you just mentioned Weird Science, another magazine I had absolutely no idea it existed until about 3 weeks ago when it popped up. I was ordering something, an RPG, and it popped up as you might like this.
Yeah.
And so I immediately ordered the first 3 or 4
Fantastic.
issues and haven't actually started reading it yet. But it looks fantastic. I really want to give that a shout out. Are you still writing for any of these magazines?
Not in a long time now.
Okay.
I wish I could go back and pick up doing reviews and articles again, but I'm designing full time now, and all my time goes on that.
Tell me a little bit about what's going on in your Patreon, because you appear to be pretty active there. Tell us how that works. Are you creating games for your patron specifically? How does that whole system work?
Yeah, so it's been a long road of self-discovery of Patreon, because like I never wanted to set it up in a way that meant that I would create exclusive content.
Yeah.
And then I had this like whole back and forward for ages when I had a £5 tier and a £3 tier. And I was like, okay, we'll have one of them be different. And then I was starting to think about people who are in like the global south and like areas where like, you know, the conversion rate isn't great and like buying power isn't strong. So eventually I decided to just do it as like both of them are essentially the same thing and people can just choose which one they want to back me at. But most people, if I haven't messed it up, should be able to like come on, support, get access to my games, usually the expansions and yeah, anything that like is just me. So like so far, Apothecaria, the Poultice Pounder adventure, that's not on my Patreon because that was a big collaborative game. But everything else is available, and it helps me to create and fund like experimental projects and game expansions. So things like all the Apothecaria expansions come about because people on Patreon pay me enough to keep a roof over my head. And in thanks, I make these fun little expansions where they can go and explore new locales and have new storylines. And I put them out when I was working on it full time, like every 2 to 3 months. Recently, because I've been working so much on the For Small Creatures Such as We game and its stretch goals for the Kickstarter, things have slowed down a lot because I've went from like 20, 30 page expansions up to like 100-page expansions.
That's a significant
And
increase.
yeah. And thankfully Patreon supporters have been very patient and understanding as we like work this out together.
Yeah. I mean, that's the wonderful thing about Patreon for like used in the way that it should be used, I think, for creatives like yourself. And people want to support you and have that personal contact and believe in what you're doing. And I think that's a really lovely thing that sort of shines both ways.
Yeah, it's great to have that. And it's great to have like the ability to actually get people's input and feedback so quickly.
Absolutely. For Small Creatures Such as We, that was a past Kickstarter project of you, but you actually have a current Kickstarter project. And at the time of this episode releasing, I think there's about a week left.
Yeah, so the current Kickstarter is it's called the Death and Pottery Collection. It's 4 zine games that have kind of appeared out of the creative ether and demanded to be made. Like
What a great
little
line.
ideas. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, little weird ideas that have popped into my head, and I have just made them and enjoyed getting to tinker around and playtest them. The 4 games in the collection are Our Once Proud House, which uses a Jenga tower. The idea is you are the squabbling siblings. Your parents have just died and left their vast empire to you to fight over. And each round you are drawing a card from the deck of playing cards, seeing what event you get as you are like taking things from the Jenga tower that are part of their empire to help you reach your own selfish goals.
Love it.
And like my other projects, it's meant to like give a lot of like player creativity. So there's no like prescribed setting. You can launch it into anything. We've done like a weird Wind in the Willows, high fantasy, like fairy mafia. We did a really bad retelling of Dune, the film, which neither of us had seen. We just know a bit about it from like cultural osmosis.
Fantastic.
And every time just left us in stitches.
Yeah.
Next on the list is A Conversation with Death, which is an experimental game that we're trying where you are playing one player as Death and another one as someone who's just died. And you are literally playing a game of chess. And each time you take an opponent's piece, you get to ask a question from that piece's question list. As you like world build like who you are, what happened to you, what happens next. And the deceased and death have different questions that will help guide this conversation in like hopefully new and unique ways that will be different to every pairing.
When you say playing a game of chess, are you playing against someone else and both telling this story, or
Yes.
you doing?
Yeah, so one of you takes on the role of death and the other one takes on the role of someone who has just died.
Fascinating. Where did that idea come from? Do you know, or it just bubbled up somewhere?
That one was there's a group called the Far Horizons Co-op here in the UK. They're another like independent game designer group, and they'd put out a call for an anthology, It was all about death, and I was like, oh, I have a wonderful idea for this. And we made it to like the last round before it got dropped off and something else got picked instead. So I decided, like, let's take that and like let's make it into a full zine and put a lot more questions into it.
It's an incredibly creative concept.
Thank
What's
you.
next on the list?
Next on the list is Historical Museum, which is born from my love of party games. So I really love games like Fun Employed and 20 Second Showdown, just things that make you get up, be silly, and just have fun on game night. So this is a little game where you have to go and grab 3 items from the house that you're playing in. You come back and everyone, one by one, reveals an item and then rolls on these tables in the book to determine the item's origin and what its purpose was. So, you know, you go and you grab your like weird Garfield plush and you come back and it is in fact an Incan fertility symbol. You then have
Famously.
to, yeah, and you then have to convince the other players, jokingly, why this should be the main exhibit in the museum. And it's like very much built on like improv comedy concepts of like yes and like really adding to the story and how to like kind of make the active player as funny as possible. And
Fantastic.
it's cooperative, so like there's no winners or losers. It's
Yeah.
everyone's going to make something, and then you all decide what the main exhibit is, what the side exhibits are, and then everything gets an info plaque and gets put around the house to be
Oh, that's fantastic.
observed.
Yeah. And to be constantly reminded of those stories every time you see your Garfield
Exactly.
plushie in your bedroom. Oh, that's great.
And then the last one is Death Road Services, which is a solo journaling game in which you run a service station on a like Mad Max Fury Road style highway.
Awesome.
The idea is, and like genesis of it is, so many of like people in our Discord, they play Apothecaria and they talk about the beautiful like washi tape and stickers and journals and pens and stuff they're getting, and I think that's great. But I want to go the exact opposite direction, and I want people to play this on like cornflakes boxes and soup labels. I want them to play it with rubbish because there is no washi tape in the apocalypse.
Of course.
And it's very grim humor, very silly. A lot of stuff about like there's a mutant drinking out of the petrol pump. You need to go and wrestle it because you can't shoot it; it'll blow the place up. And yeah, there's a chance that you like fail the card draw to overpower this little mutant, and it just sits on you and drinks the fuel.
Oh, that's
And
fantastic.
like silly ideas like that.
I might have to get that and use it to inform. I have a long-running Fallout solo RPG
This would be perfect for it.
podcast. So yeah, that sounds absolutely perfect for it. Fantastic. And so once you got this Kickstarter wrapped up, now at this episode, I believe, I don't know the date exactly. In fact, let's just pause for a sec and just... So at the time of release of this episode, there is just over a week until that Kickstarter ends. So go to Kickstarter and check that out. Give us the name again so people can have a quick search.
The Death and Pottery Collection.
Death and Pottery Collection. Love it. I'll also put a link in the show notes to that. And what else is going on in your design future once this Kickstarter gets wrapped up?
Quite a lot. So
you
I've
can
still
talk
got,
about.
yeah, I've still got the For Small Creatures Such as We Kickstarter to finish. That has now been 3 years. It's been a very tumultuous development period, but I'm working on the final expansion stretch goal, and then all of that will be fulfilled later this year. After that, I am working on a solo RPG called Shirefolk, which is inspired by the Shire from The Hobbit. And it's all about building up your burrow, collecting gossip about your neighbours, and generally just living that fun Shire life.
Lovely.
Or it's got a competitive cooperative slightly mode where you and another player have both been bequeathed Granny's silverware, but you need to complete certain tasks to see who gets the full set.
Just lovely. If you're having a bad day, just design a hobbit hole.
Exactly.
But yeah, beautiful.
After that, I'm going to be starting work on Delve Reforged, which is a massive sequel to Delve, starting in 2026, and I'll be releasing like standalone-ish modules over on Patreon, so people can follow development.
Fantastic. So what is your Patreon so people can find you over there and see what's happening?
Patreon.com/Anna Blackwell.
Good. You can also go to the itch.io site, which is Blackwell Games, is that right?
Blackwellwriter.itch.io.
blackwellwriter.itch.io, and your website, blackwellwriter.com.
Yep. Yeah, I initially started as wanting to be an author.
Okay.
My first novel is out as of last year.
Oh, that's right. I saw that come up as well.
Yeah, so that is my first novel after many, many years of fighting writer's block.
Yeah.
But thankfully, due to solo RPGs, I was able to find the love of writing again and managed to actually write a full novel, and I'm so happy.
This is the Wolf and Fang Detective
Yeah.
Agency, is it? Yeah, I remember seeing
It's
that.
set in the same universe as Apothecaria.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Wolf and Fang Detective Agency. The first book in the series is called The God Thief. And it's about a werewolf and vampire detective duo who have left the city guard to start their own detective agency and are struggling to make ends meet. And their latest case has got them embroiled in a divine conspiracy as they track a stolen religious artifact and have to face criminal gangster witches, mad elves, toll trolls, and a golden goose.
That is absolutely fantastic. What was it like writing that after so many years of having the block?
It was strange. So I was doing it with NaNoWriMo and like just committing to at least 1,500 words a day. And to like just sit down, like at first it was hard, like to sit down, do the words. But I think because I'd been doing a lot of solo RPGs, I'd been writing without feeling that like pressure that I used to put on myself. So when I was writing this, I was just writing it for me and my partner. Like I wasn't worried about like, making this into a real thing or publishing it. But once I'd finished, I was like, oh my God, this is a full novel. It's like 300 plus pages. Like it just appeared.
Wow.
And then I started to get a bit stressed and frightened about it. So I was like, oh no, this has to be real.
Yeah. Now I've got to do something with it.
Yeah. But thankfully I had a lot of support to help edit it and get it formatted and actually get it out into the world.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
I highly recommend, check out the show notes, check out all the links. There's a huge amount of games of such wonderfully different creative angles here for you to check out. And they're all nice and manageable. None of these are huge rule sets that you're going to have to commit to sit down for hours and hours on end to learn. And knowing that you have that ethos of good feelings behind it is a really nice touch as well. And so I recommend anyone go and check these things out. If you have any more questions for Anna has just, before in the green room of the show, agreed to come and join us over on the Celebrity Lounge over on the Solo RolePlayers Podcast Patreon, over at Patreon/Solo RolePlayers. I'll put up a post in the next week or so about when that is going to be, once we've organized a date. Now that you have finished all your circus training, we should be able to find a time to do that. And yeah, that's it. Thank you again so much for coming onto the show. I can't wait to see how this Kickstarter goes. I look forward to reading the book and seeing what else comes out of your creative mind. Thank you, Anna.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. This was great.